Friends, today is Thursday, the 30th of July. We're in the cathedral. We just concluded Mass. It's a beautiful day and the sun shining through the windows of the cathedral. And today in our Gospel we bring to a conclusion the series of parables that we started, maybe 2, even 3 weeks ago. Chapter 13 of St. Matthew's Gospel. Very important chapter in the Gospel, giving us at least seven parables of the kingdom to help us understand, and maybe not fully, but at least to help us understand some of the mysteries of the kingdom. And at the very end, our Gospel today says to the disciples, Jesus says, "Do you understand all these things? Do you understand all these things?" And they boldly say, yes. Not sure what my response would be, but it would be hopefully to say yes as well. The mysteries of the kingdom. At the very beginning of the chapter, when Jesus spoke to the disciples, he said, "Let those who have ears to hear, hear and understand the mysteries of the kingdom." And the very first parable that we listened to was the seed sown by the sower and the different kinds of soils that seed would be thrown to. And one of them was good soil. And Jesus obviously intends for his word to fall upon good soil, the good soil that is the disciples who are kind of set apart as special. The crowds will not understand, but you will, because you're open to the word. Ears to hear, eyes to see, and so on. And thus when we come to a conclusion here, Jesus is asking, do they understand? They say yes. And then Jesus says, then every scribe who has been instructed in the kingdom of heaven is like the head of a household who brings from his storeroom both the new and the old. The head of the household, brings from his storeroom both the new and the old. Whenever I read that passage from the scriptures, I think of a former abbot of Mount Angel Abbey, Abbot Bonaventure Zur. And he was a great scripture scholar, Old Testament and New Testament both. And he had this line, the household, who brings from his storeroom, the head of the household, both the old and the new. He had that placed on his tombstone, and you can see that in the cemetery at Mount Angel. And if the kind of different scribe than the ones condemned by Jesus in the New Testament, but the scribe who is able to put together the Old and the New Testaments, to see in Jesus the fulfillment of the Old Testament. And the scribes of his time could not. Jesus was some wayward troublemaker, really, but certainly not the fulfillment of the Old Testament. But the wise scribe, with eyes to see and ears to hear, knows that Jesus is the fulfillment. And thus he's able to bring from his storeroom the old and the new. You know, as I get older, I always kind of appreciate a birthday. People say to me, well, how old are you? And, oh, too bad, getting old. But to me, I enjoy getting older. You know, the body changes a bit and so on, but I enjoy getting older because I have a different perspective on things as an older person than a young person. In a sense, I'm seeing things from a little higher level. I can see the lay of the land in a way that I couldn't when I was younger. My perspective was smaller, and now my perspective is broader with life experience and so on. And so we listened to these many parables, and the parables we had, starting with the sower and the seed, then the weeds and the wheat, then the mustard seed, the tiny little mustard seed that grows into the great bush, or the yeast and the dough. A little bit of yeast in the dough livens that whole lump of dough. And the treasure, the kingdom is like the treasure in a field, or the pearl of great price. And today's parable is the net thrown into the sea, the drag net. The net, Jesus, of course, is standing along the shore or in the house in Capernaum. He could just look out the window and point to the shore where the fishermen were pulling in their nets. And the nets pull in everything, the good and the evil. And the gospel today says the kingdom of heaven is like a net thrown into the sea, which collects fish of every kind, the good and the bad. And the parable is very much like the wheat and the weeds, that at the end of the age, it says, at the end of the age, when the net is pulled in, they place into the buckets the good fish, and the bad they throw out. At the end of the age, the angels will go out and separate the wicked and the righteous. And the parable kind of reaffirms something we probably don't really want to hear, and that is the inevitability of judgment, that we will be ultimately accountable for ourselves. But we leave to God that separation of good and evil, because our eyes today don't necessarily see or able even to discern what is good and what is evil. And sometimes in our zeal, we will destroy and wipe out or hurt someone who is good, thinking they're evil. But the gospel warns us, and I mentioned before that temptation to impatience, to kind of take care of things ourselves. But the gospel tells us to wait. Let God, at the end of the age, make that separation of good and evil. For us, the importance is to be good disciples, to be good soils, to let that word come in and take root within us, and to live a good and faithful life, to be that scribe as every scribe who has been instructed in the kingdom is like the head of a household who brings from his storeroom the old and the new. That's what we need, that wisdom, to be that scribe. Hold that thought, and we'll see you tomorrow.